Hi everybody, please join me in welcoming Gilad Karni to the Discarded Compass. It's going to be a great show. Gilad is an ex-professional basketball player, an ex-Israeli Special Forces, and also Gilad has dedicated his work to understanding and realising the true nature of the self and ever-present oneness being. Gilad is also committed to helping others dissolve the false sense of self, of separation and limitation in order to facilitate the truest expression of the self, and is passionate about bringing unity to the self, business and leadership and society in alignment with the oneness of our nature. We're excited to have Gilad with us today to share his insights and wisdom. Gilad, how are you? Welcome.
Thank you for hosting me, John. I'm doing very well and excited for a conversation. I listened to quite a few of your episodes before, and you are doing a great job on the podcast. I'm sure we will have a really great discussion.
Thank you. I'm really excited and to know what your perspective is on business and spirituality, of course. And your background is quite unique when it comes to speakers of non-dual and teachers as such. You're an ex-Israeli Special Forces and a professional basketball player. You were captain to your country, am I right?
Yes, I was a captain of the under-24 national team. That was over a decade ago. And you're not in the US, but we end up even playing the American team for a championship in China. It was a great time to. It was quite. What was it, about a year or 2 years after I came out of the military, or 3 years maybe. So it was a very meaningful moment actually to suddenly represent my country playing for the national team.
So you're a fairly patriotic person, am I right?
Not now. Growing up in Israel, it's just part of the culture. We are so used to survival and protecting our tiny little land after many years of being kind of all over the world, Israeli Jewish people. So you grow up around being very protective and caring for your country, because it's something that we haven't had for thousands of years. So I can say that it was much of a conscious choice rather than a way to grow up. Now I don't see myself patriotic for one country. I see myself patriotic for the unity of the planet and people, and I don't put more important on one specific location on this planet that we all live on that is needed more protection than anyone else. Ideally, I want to see all levels of protections and all systems of protection actually dissolve and bringing form of connection and understanding between all of us.
That's quite a unique perspective and experience to have. Because we all know of the conflict there, and in Ireland we've had our conflicts and oppressions, and it does leave lasting patterns, fairly tough patterns to heal, but I don't want to delve into what I would like to ask you first was, coming from that background, and obviously people are trained to be in the military, there's a regime, and also with being a professional basketball player, there's competitiveness, there's training, there's continuously trying to be the best, to be the fittest, to outwit everybody else, to be the sharpest. It's a team game. Military's a team game. Like, what happened that stopped? And I know you don't want to go into the non-dual stuff too much, but what happened? I'm really interested to know.
Well, what happened for me, or that I lost interest in it, or changed to what I do today? This is the question.
Well, something must have happened that to go from one thing to another, to spirituality, that contrast to one.
Yeah. So yes and no. There were many. Two things. First of all, a lot of education that I've immersed myself for over a decade now. Not necessarily only spirituality, but all forms of human function, from the body to mind to spirit to emotions to nutrition, physical activity. I've really explored many different approaches, and usually from some kind of an alternative approach, less the Western medicine thing, because I always thought there's something missing. So that's first, just natural curiosity that was always there, and kind of spiked up again in my early 20s, where I really dove deep into many of them, and I'm very experimental in my nature. So when I'm curious about something and I'm passionate about it, I don't only study it, I try it, and I really go all the way with it. I was raw vegan as an athlete when I was about 23 or something. It was maybe the only one in the league, maybe in the history of the league to do that. So I really like to experiment with new approaches that I learn about. So that's one. Second, there were many epiphanies throughout my life on seeing things from different perspective, seeing the nature of myself from a different perspective. Glimpses of epiphany or realization, whatever we want to call it, that also led to that. But in a way, I from this point of view, I really see how it was always there, and in a way, so often I loved the sports environment. I loved the game. I loved the passion and the tenacity and the drive. But in a way, I always felt not fully fitting in, and maybe actually too spiritual to be in high-performing spaces. That aspect of ourselves is not welcomed. When I went into the spiritual communities and mindfulness practices and meditation groups and an understanding of consciousness and all forms of spirituality, I liked it as well. But again, I didn't feel like I was fully fitting in because I was so driven, still am. I'm very driven. I'm very passionate. I'm very creative. I like to move myself with things. I like this energy of life or the universe to really conduct the experience for me, and it's very, very powerful. So often in the spiritual communities, I kind of find myself again too driven, maybe, and too passionate, and usually often in spiritual communities is a little bit more reserved or more less direct or less passionate, and not all of them, but so in a way I was in both for a long time in my life, but never really found myself within any of them. And for me, the merge of both of them, and even today in the business and spiritual understanding together, really gives outlet to me and people I work with to bring those both sides. People who are very passionate and very high performing in how they operate in the world, but not doing it in harmful ways, like often sports want to do over people and abuse of the body and compete just to crush other people, and all of this kind of dualistic game that is played in almost all places in our society. So in a way, the journey was just not finding myself in almost any group or any situation or any community that allows me in a way to bring my whole self into it. In every place, it was kind of a little bit too much, some aspect of it. So for me, the kind of community that I formed and the people I work with today are actually meeting in that intersection. Business leaders and business owners that are really passionate, really driven, very purposeful, can really put the work in and go all the way in with things, but also bring a heart of compassion and understanding of our shared nature and expression of the self, without compromising any of them and without seeing it as dualistic thing that needs to be compromised.
Yeah, your personal experience though of non-duality, just to touch on that a little bit, like there's no sense of self, it's just what does it feel like for you?
What does it feel like to be myself, if this is the question, and why is it non-dual? To be myself feels like being present. But it's not, it doesn't feel like there is some individuality. There is an individual, obviously, but if I stay very close, connected with my experience, let's even remove for a second individual, self, no self. If I stay very close with my experience, without getting lost in the context of experience, the context of experiences or the content of experiences, thoughts and emotions and objects out there in the world and events, if I don't get lost in them, the nature of experience is being that is present. There's a sense of beingness, and this sense of beingness only happen in a present. And it's not a present moment even, it just, what is it? It's present.
Mm-hmm.
We can never draw any other evidence on our experience other than being present. It's all we know. Now, when we go away from being intimate with that experience, and then we get lost in perception or so-called external view on an external world, then we get lost in the content of experience and starting to form some kind of a sense of separation, that there is something internal here and something external over there. But there is never where maybe the easiest to understand the non-dual understanding in our own experience is that there are never two experiences. Whatever is experienced is being experienced in one experience. And all of this experience happening in some kind of being present experience.
It's like we're a verb. I like that. We're kind of verbing. You said a couple of things I just want to remember. And when you were talking about you never found yourself in business, in sports or the military or business, really, and you never found yourself in non-duality. That kind of something clicked there that was new to me in a way, because I'm also in business and I'm spiritual kind of a person as well. You could say I'm on this sort for 20 years, but and it's, but you never found yourself in any of them, which is interesting. And you also said about your explanation of non-duality was that we get lost in thoughts. Now, somebody that hasn't been introduced to non-duality, there can be, I'd like you to talk about that maybe, there can be a difference between ignorant, maybe, is the word. I don't like the word, but there's no other word for ignorant, I don't think. Ignorance, not knowing that there's a non-dual path. No one's ever told you, you're totally hedonistic, maybe, and off you go through life, steamrolling over everybody, climbing the corporate ladder, stepping on toes, doing it your way. And then you got a non-dual perspective like yours in business. I feel the difference often of it. And I have the benefits of that. And other people benefit from it too. From my inquiry, you could say. How does that integrate well in business? Or is there any difference between the hedonistic type, the ignorant type that hasn't been informed, and the non-dual perspective, living business with a non-dual perspective?
Yeah. So if we leave the philosophy aside for a second, it's easy to get into any understanding, be spiritual, non-dual, philosophical, religious, whatever. If we get into information and trying to understand the information of it or the philosophy of it, again we are trapped in mind games or information that is trying to be understood. My invitation is to explore the nature of ourselves. When we explore the nature of ourselves, we come to very clear and simple recognition that doesn't take too long to get to. That is often, even perhaps in the spiritual communities, perceived like there is, I don't know how many decades of practice in order to realize the self, to I don't know, call it enlightenment if you want, pure consciousness, awareness. We use many words to describing the nature of reality, and everything we say point to it, but doesn't really convey it. So my invitation to explore the nature of our experience, or the nature of self. When we do this exploration, we recognize there are a few components, or there are a few qualities. Sorry, it's not a few components, but there's recognition of few qualities. Quality number one, it's ever present. It's never not being present. How much time and effort actually people put into trying to be more present, right? And in a process that is bound to time. So I'm over time, I'm trying to be more present. That's in a way kind of not really aligned with being present. Mm-hmm. So the first recognition is I am ever present, because I've never had a different experience other than being present. I cannot withdraw an evidence to my experience of a past and a future. I can draw a thought and memory about it, but I cannot go to my experience and say, right now I'm experiencing being in a past or in a future. I can say I'm thinking about a past or a future, but that's not an experience, that's a thought. So a much easier way to train ourselves to be present is to go to that place. It's important to do the orienting the mind and doing a lot of practices to bring it to focus and not have it in excessive thinking, but in a way recognizing that part of ourselves really in a way washes out a lot of the obsessive activity about trying to get somewhere or being more present very naturally. So quality number one is I am ever present. Quality number two, there is some kind of, because the complete unconditional nature of it, if the only thing that it is present, and within something that is ever present, so there is no boundary to it, there is no duality in it, there is no separation in it, it's not I have ever present and you have ever present. It's completely unconditional. So we would say that it's eternally free, and from that recognition of it's eternally or unconditionally free, there's a lot of joy that again, just naturally being rising up in our experience, because we've been looking for something for so long, or been trying to be ourselves, or to find ourselves, or to get to freedom. So the recognition that the nature of ourself is already unconditional freedom now bring another quality of just pure joy or eternal joy that is part of the experience. So where does that apply to business from that place, rather than trying to understand what non-duality is? I would ask a very simple question. If the nature of self is joy and freedom, we will say, why wouldn't it be the nature of business? Why wouldn't it be the nature of our leadership environments? Why wouldn't it be the nature of every word, action, relationship that we form? So to some perspective, it might seem weird to call spirituality, the word spirituality in business, but if we take a moment to think about it, how weird it is that we created environments that are not in alignment with the nature of ourselves. And we look at how many environments, business, social systems function, and we can very clearly see the evidence that it just doesn't work. Most people cannot tell about themselves. I live and experience the unconditional joy and freedom of my nature, right? Most people are likely to say there's some kind of stress, I'm close to burnout, I don't really like what I do, or I'm not fully fulfilled by the life that I have, I don't see a way out of it, I don't really like the people I'm interacting with, the environment doesn't promote my freedom and my full self-expression. So we created environments that are very, they're based in hierarchy, So that's already against our true nature, and they are based in power dynamics that again also not in alignment with our true nature. So if we want to first be fulfilled, first find freedom and happiness that is not bound to future events or achievements, and if we want to be operating at our best. So I'm not suggesting some lofty idea. I'm calling you as a human being to function from this ultimate potential that's within you. I'm not saying compromise how you show up. Actually, I call to enhance it multiple degrees. So from that place, everything that we engage with is just has so much more energy and power to it, and we don't have this filter that gets in our way anymore of thoughts and doubts and power dynamics and wasting resources and energy towards resistance or towards fighting over. There isn't. So for me, it's maybe the most productive way, even for better function and for higher performance. In sports, we will call it being in the zone. So I actually invite for an experience that in your business where you're always in the zone.
Yeah, I love that, in the zone. And I think I mentioned in another podcast, Ayrton Senna, I think he did a lap of Monaco, and it was a perfect lap. You can probably see it in YouTube, folks, but where he afterwards, he said, I wasn't driving the car. It just was automatic. That was quite profound I wasn't into non-duality or spirituality at the time when I heard it, and I thought, wow. And the zone, people rock climb without ropes, to be in the zone, to do dangerous pursuits, to be in the zone, and that's quite interesting, that zone. I get an intuitive sense of what you're talking about. But on top of that, listening to you talk about business, and there's a very good explanation, by the way, and very insightful, was the fact of, it seemed to me, how can somebody be really creative at the top and be so egoic, maybe? Because there's no openness. You even spoke of the openness that you had since your early days. You have to have an open mind. Maybe that's programmed in, maybe it's grace or whatever. But that mind is historic. We all kind of that have read anything about non-duality know that it's dead. They're dead thoughts. They're historic thoughts. That's why we get things. That's why we get what we've always got, because we thought like we've always thought. And it sort of intrigues me that people at the top in business, how they're still there. Now, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but just coming from my own perspective, and probably you have something to say about it. How are people still running these businesses when they're operating from an historic point of view? Or how does work get done? How does new creativity happen?
Nice. That's a great question, and I want to dive deeper into those leaders or the leadership structure we created. But I want to touch something about the being in the zone experience. In my work, I work with a lot of former pro athletes, just by my nature. So by my background, I tend to often the people who come to me are business owners who are former pro athletes, and we talk about this in this experience of being in the zone, because every athlete experienced it at some point in their athletic career. And performers or artists, we can call it flow. It's the same thing. And what's being perceived by the mind's perspective or the me perspective is that I enter into the zone and I get out of the zone. But that's not the nature of our experience or the nature of reality. The nature of reality or who we are is always being in the zone. Being is always in the zone. Being never gets in and out of itself. It's always what it is. Being can never be other than itself. So it's not entering or getting out of the zone. There is always being in the zone, and at times there is just more attachment to the character called me, and at times the attachment to the character called me dissolves, and we are completely immersed with the experience. Amazingly enough, going into this non-dual self-inquiry or understanding, provides many more moments, so-called, of being in the zone, because that character that gets in the way of things just doesn't pop up as much anymore. So what seem to be glimpses of moments of being in the zone becomes glimpses of moments of a character reappearing at times. If we want to take it, we call it for in more spiritual terms, call it enlightenment. So from glimpses of enlightenment, the enlightenment is the overarching experience, and there's glimpses of of individual appearing within it, like glimpses of thoughts that come in. But really, when we go to that, being in the zone in some way becomes the primary experience.
And then there's nearly, if a company was operating from this perspective and that understanding, there would be some sort of an understanding that we're all in this together, because we all have our own experience as such, to use words. So everybody will know it's not a personal experience, it's a collective being of this. So it's nearly like that must free up a business, mustn't it? Even that understanding.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you think? It's quite interesting. I mean, have you worked this method, Gilad? You've worked with certain professional sports people, and what has the results been for them?
Some of the primary things that clients share with me about their experience of our process is really that recognition or connection or to this unconditional freedom, or the fullest and truest expression of their true self, and the joy that comes with it, and removing, dissolving all of these thoughts about doubts and about lack of trust and about fear that always gets in the way, because the me perspective on the world is always full of doubts, fears, uncertainty, and it wastes so much energy of battling against these forces. So some of the primary words that clients end up sharing is, from trying to find happiness, they would say, I am happiness. I see that I am happiness. I see that the joy is my true nature. But in a felt experience, it's not a thought. It's really felt in their experience. And when we show up differently and we show up from this place, so the world shows up completely different in front of us. I think that if we remove from every human environment, be it business, being social systems, those getting in the way processes of fears and doubts and insecurity about yourself or about the person in front of you, what is possible? What can possibly get in your way if this entire mechanism is not there anymore?
And if that entire mechanism isn't there anymore, would there be a climbing of the corporate ladder? I mean,
there will be natural progression or growth, call it, because that individual will just function so well. Recently, the best example I have is a client that I work with. I usually work with business owners. He was an employee that I don't usually often work with employees, but we've been working together for quite a few months. And he made the investment himself. Usually employees wants the employer to pay for their coaching and stuff like that, but he made the investment himself.
Well done.
He took also, during our work together, he took a few months off from his work and came back to it after we finished the process. Within the first week that he's back, he's sending me an email that his boss recognized the amazing change that happened within him, and they offered him to reimburse him for the investment that he made in working with me.
Wow.
He never asked for it. He never thought to receive anything. but they saw a different human being walk into the door than the one that stepped into the door 8-9 months back. And they said, what you've done is amazing, and we want to compensate you for that. This is one of the most recent examples, but it shows up differently, because when we show up from that place, rather we are raising funds for our non-profit or business, work with our clients, lead the team that we have within the organization, it changes everything. It changes, because the only thing that gets in the way is this kind of psychological process of sense of separation, that out of which now comes fear, insecurity, lack of connection, doubts, hesitation about, but not hesitation about thinking of where to go next. It's hesitation about what I know is true to myself. So what we are doing is really dissolving all mechanisms that get in the way of going with what I know true to myself.
Yeah.
So I think that every action that you ever take from this moment on is only in alignment with what you already know is true to yourself.
Yeah.
We touch a little bit. You ask about the leadership places, and I want to touch that. So if you have another question, let's go. But I want us to remember to touch it, because it's
fire
such
away. Talk about the leadership, of course. I have it down here on my notes to ask you anyway. Yeah.
I think so. You ask how in a way why leadership environments are like that now, right? And those power dynamics. I think what we are suffering from at this point of all systems, again, being all systems operate. Let's take it a moment back for a second. All systems, call it business, government, social thing, all of them operate in very similar way, because all of them sitting on a paradigm or a software that's called duality.
Okay.
That's called sense of separation. So
their programming is they're programmed like a computer to be a certain way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And all of them are, because the most common belief in the world is the sense of separation. The belief in separation is the most common belief. Maybe money and belief in separation are the two most common beliefs in the world, which probably there is correlation over there. But what I think we really suffer from right now, that it's been happening for many years, is right now we experience all the people in top positions and in really high positions. And all of this, not all, I can generalize, but what I sense is many of these people, it's people that for many years wanted to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we have in leadership positions people who hold the power, people who wanted power and wanted to be at the top.
Yeah.
And I think that's the worst thing that might have happened to us.
The worst.
Because I think it's a very detrimental thing, that people who have the power and people who have the authority are people who wanted to have it.
They wanted. That's the key word, is it? That they wanted
yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes. And ideally, you want in leadership positions people who want no power. These are the people you want to promote. But who do we promote? Those top performers who didn't care to beat everyone else around them and only care for their individual performance, or really they went on such a strong pursuit to be at the top because all they wanted is power. And so we see how, again, if we look at how our social environment is right now, in every space, the sense of hierarchy, and which is great. It's getting better, a lot better, at least in the last decade, and many people are open to coaching and to change. There is a drastic change of how leaders, especially in business, I know, and how the leaders conduct themselves and create the environments, but there's still a lot that is happening in a way of abuse of power. So the moment when you put someone in a power position, someone who really wanted the power, I think there's something tricky in here, right? It's like say, yeah. Like let someone to run our budgets, the person who wanted all the money to himself. I think that's tricky. My best advice in organizations of promoting leaders is actually to look for the people who often lag behind their own performance because they're always preoccupied helping everyone else. They can't help themselves of putting their project aside because they're helping other people. It's always comes first with them. But usually these people don't get promoted because you don't see them on the scoreboard or on the statistics. And they never care to have power because they're not about it. They are about helping others. But usually the promotion comes to those who wanted to have the power and didn't help anyone else. For me, I think that's a little bit of or not a little bit, it's a big detriment that it is. And the power dynamics are very unequal. There are few people, few spaces, few environments with a lot of power and a lot of people who don't have the same authority over their decisions, their experience, and etc. Their life we do have, but again, the power dynamics are very unequally distributed, and like we hoard resources, the individual separate self always want to hoard power as well, because inside it feels powerless. Mm-hmm. Because inside it feels powerless. So it goes out to positions and titles and fame and money and accomplishments in order to find its sense of power.
It's survival, yeah, the ghost of a me. And it's like power's not enough because they never have enough power because power's not enough. It's like it's an ongoing vicious circle.
Like money for people, right?
Oh yeah.
People who seek fulfillment in money and freedom and happiness in money. It's an endless game. You just need more and more and more and more and more of it. And the more you have, you need more because it's you become immune to what was before amazing amount of money. Now it becomes nothing. So you always need to expand what it is. But I think that's very clear I think, or I hope it is, that it's very clear that it doesn't work to go towards whatever it is, money, fame, and spirituality as a pursuit to find the solution we want to our experience.
There are certain self-help groups, I think, that work from the bottom up, but they don't point the guns downwards. There's no pyramid of people pointing guns downwards, which happens in a lot of civil servants and companies. But there are groups that work from the bottom up in a spiritual context, and they vote for trusted servants, not leaders. They call them trusted servants. That's all they are. And they know that's all they are. They're nothing more. It's good, and that's it. There's no title, isn't it? There's no, it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that actual group that I'm talking about was founded on a non-dual perspective. I won't go into it because I could write a book and I won't do about that. But you mentioned potentiality, which is another favorite topic of mine, and it feels intuitively true to call it potentiality. It's potentiality, always, never. And it's quite an amazing feeling intuitively to kind of understand. Where does this leave an approach to, like, because if you approach anybody about non-duality and walk into a business, say, look, there's no me, you're going to have to do this such and such, and there's nobody gonna, there can be quite a resistance, Gilad, to that. Would you be more or less the type to say it's rather attraction more than promotion, or how would it work to implement this?
To implement the non-dual understanding?
Yeah, your method of running businesses egolessly, you could say, or from an non-dual perspective, how can it be implemented and undertook?
Very simply. Again, the only we need to differentiate between philosophical debate or explanation about who we are, what non-duality, spirituality, even business, right? So we need to differentiate, because then you can go forever about me, know me, reality, who it is, consciousness. So where I find the application is very helpful is guiding. So if I try to put any title to what I do, which I don't hold really any title, because for me they also feel kind of limited or not really point to the thing. So I leave it to the people I work with to call it whatever they want. What often they would say, and I can relate to the experience, is there's a facilitation of their truest expression.
Okay.
There isn't really that much of a teaching. This is who you are, and this is what you need to know about it. And there's a dialogue at times, but what I'm in a way doing as a professional is I facilitate their truest expression of self. The beauty of it is we say there is no self or no me. We don't regard it of no physical being walking in this world, which we can debate it as well. But I'm less interested in is it right or wrong. What is beautiful is the diverse and creative expression of that true nature through a living organism, in this case a human being. But also when we look in nature, the expression of being is so diverse and so beautiful and so interconnected and so equally distributed. There is no hierarchy in nature. There isn't one tree in a forest that needs to direct the action of everyone else. If we look at a natural ecosystem and ask who is the leader, the only thing we might be able to point to is the level and depth of connection between all the living organisms in that environment. And there isn't anyone that needs to do anything about it beyond being itself. Because when being is being itself, then connection naturally happens, freedom is naturally experienced, joy is naturally expressed. So for me, it's the facilitation of that experience for the person in front of me, that is, and removing all barriers or processes that get in the way of that being fully expressed, and in the most creative way possible. So I like to look at business and to say business is a creative expression of love. Business is a creative expression of love. Where there is this kind of separation maybe of business and spirituality, for me that's merging them together. I'm less interested in doing arts. Less interested to sit in a studio and paint and do sculptures. So my creative expression is creating things that business as a platform allows the expression of it, from a podcast to guiding people to create a group program or whatever it is. So it just allows me, this is my way of expressing my love in a creative way. And for everyone it's very different, but the guidance towards it is let's have your business as your creative expression of love. And then we also take friction out. Mm-hmm. Because I think that if what you do for the 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 hours a day that you work, however many hours each day, think that all of it is just a pure and unconditional expression, creative expression of your love. Within that, there is no resistance, there is no stress, there is no a doubt about who you are and what you do and what value does it have. Yeah, we conduct business, and then we need to grow it, and we need to bring people in, and we have clients, and we have commitments. It's not removing this aside, and it's not saying no, these are not important, or this will just take care of themselves magically when you are yourself. No, but it's all part of what you're creating is coming out of how love wants to, or truth, we can call it as well, truth, wants to express itself naturally and creatively through you. And it's always very creative. It's never duplicated. It's never, trying to copy anything. It's very creative because it's completely new.
For me, it just seems a lot more effortless to do things.
It's completely effortless.
There's no huge committee meeting in the head about everything.
Right. So where I'll jump into that, where I see at times people who are interested in the work perceive like it's going actually to be a very hard work, where in a way it's a little bit different than traditional coaching or personal development approaches, which says something about hard work.
Yeah.
But how hard of work would it be for you to experience joy and freedom right now? How hard do you work being in the zone? There is no effort in it. There is still action, there is still engagement, right? You don't perform less when you're in the zone. You are not taking care of what needs to be taken care of. No, right? Everything is just enhanced tenfolds.
Yeah.
Right. So the worries of the individual, because there is a worry of the me, or the psychological, or the ego, if we call it, of wait, nothing will happen when I'm not here.
Yeah.
But he cannot see that actually it is in the way of everything is happening because he thinks that it's here. So I and at times because I combine different approaches, and we do healing work at times if necessary, and more deeper transformations. But ideally, I don't invite you to do hard work. I invite you to experience joy and freedom right now, and let the rest of our process unfold from that place. And how much effort does that take?
Yeah, you're just making me think. I read a lot, of course, but I was looking into the idea of free will. I won't go into it too much, but they reckon that it's like a resource, we just say, and it probably is like a resource of some sort. Some people say it's a muscle, but I like to say the body has to sleep. It wakes up in the morning and suddenly it's recharged and the battery's full, and now you've got the energy to do whatever you need to do. And I just think that energy goes through the body and is applied. But they reckon too that energy can be blocked and used to not do something. And like you said there, I'm going to stay in being nobody. That's using that resource, I think. That willpower, whatever you might call it. Maybe it's a higher will we should be just flowing with and allowing to happen, maybe in a certain context. But it just seems to me there's a lot of truth in what you're saying, is that if we try to hinder this process and ignorantly try and put things upon us to be a certain way, to have this effortlessness, it's like trying to be effortless. It can't work. You're using up. It's a block. And I was more aware of that during my few days at home working, and I had a lot of stuff to do, and I got a lot of stuff done. Was there would be a couple of times I'd wake up and suddenly there's a stop, and I was, oh, there you go.
Yeah.
That's willpower. Oh yeah, okay. I'm not gonna, yeah. And as soon as it's seen, it's over. There's a lot in what you're saying there. Would you agree with that fact of willpower, potentiality? I mean, I'm just trying to get people to understand where you're coming from, maybe more clearly.
Yeah. Perhaps maybe we can draw some distinction between free will to willpower or not, but if we want to stay close to the truth, I guess, of no self or who we are, we will say free will only happens in the illusory experience of the individual, right? Like a character in a movie has free will, but it just isn't real. So there is free will within an experience that isn't real. But perhaps where we can utilize it, maybe we can look at it like a nitro for a car. You know, you at times you click the button and you go on a stretch, but it's quick. But most of us operate from this place most of the time. Why we get exhausted?
Yeah.
Why we drain ourselves from energy? So I again less interested in there is or there isn't for a moment, taking it from the philosophical place. Let's say perhaps it's a tool that we can utilize, right? But let's take the leg off the pedal. We are clicking the nitro 90% of the time, so we burn out the engine like any car
with the handbrake on.
So
yeah.
Yes, and not knowing where we're going either, so it's going in
I'm really
in
going
circles.
up the corporate ladder, and I'm
going in circles to nowhere. With full throttle and handbrake. Yeah, the me perception is so energy inefficient.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So energy inefficient. It's think that all of this time and energy spent on thoughts, on thinking about tomorrow, yesterday, future, doubt, should I, will I, have I, for me, against me, with me. When all of this is removed, what then? It's there's so much freedom, there's so much energy in it when it doesn't go to that space. At times when we get there with client projects, that's been when I get there with clients, project that's been on the back burner for them for 8 months, 10 months, planning, trying to figure out how, when. In 5 minutes, we create what they've been for 10 months been thinking of. Because we remove all of these thoughts that about shoulds, whens, will I, or all the energy draining experience around it, and then we go back to again how does it naturally want to express? What would it be if I stay very in touch with the truest expression of it, and how it wants to be, which is not bound to how it needs to be, or a formula that's already created, or the how to process that everyone follow to, or the repeatable process. This is not interesting. Some people like it, but for me that's not interesting. When an artist or a performer go into the studio, they don't think of what is the repeatable system to create a magnificent piece of art today. No, they get in, they lose themselves in the experience, and whatever is expressed is their only job is to let it express without ever getting in the way.
Yeah, it's like Lionel Messi won't say before the game, I'm going to stand 2 feet away from the goal and I'm going to hit the ball up. It's a totally erroneous concept to believe in. That there's a certain
but in a way, to be in that place takes a lot of practice, because I played basketball for 30 years. So wherever right now, call me, tell me, come in half an hour to play a game, I'm ready. And I can potentially be in the zone in every moment, and I can enjoy the experience, and I can be free, and I can be creative. But because I put the work for so long, and I put thousands of hours into it, tens of thousands of hours. So it's not, again, where people who don't come from that place and more planning type or thinking type think that, wait, we're not going to do any planning, not going to think about, like, I think that there is a dismissing of that aspect. But there isn't dismissing of training and getting better and invest in your well-being and take care of the body. All of these are important, actually. The more you are in well-being, the more you can perform at the highest level in anything that you do. But in a way, to be in that space where you really dissolve any sense of separation and any mechanism of doubt and lack of trust, just takes many hours of practice in engaging with what it is, like athletes do it on the course. So same with your business. You just need to do it so many times, so many hours in the way you run your business, like that it just becomes natural and you feel fully in your power operating from that place.
Yeah. And like, it's not really the painting of the picture where you're in the zone or you're going for that dunk shot and you're in the zone. But it's different. Like, you have to plan, of course, but you can be in the zone in the planning and the strategic input of the whole thing as well, can't you? So we're really talking about a fundamental change across the board through every aspect of sport, business, leadership.
Yeah. There's difference between putting an hour on my calendar for planning than spending 3 months at the middle of the night planning unintentionally and unconsciously, just because worry kicks in. So now my mind is planning completely out of order and out of choice. So
inefficient.
Yes, much better that you take rest during this time. So in the hour you dedicate for planning, you are again in the zone while you do planning. You're in the zone while you practice. So it doesn't negate any activity. It calls for a different experience within the activity and call to remove all the processes that again emerge out of fear, doubt, untrained mind, excessive thinking, that are way more detrimental than helpful.
And there's procrastination, which a lot of people suffer from that. There's that too, which is the willpower blocked or some description.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot in this. There's a lot to unpack. What are your hopes for to help people, how you see a change happening for businesses and leadership?
Yeah. For me, it's a kind of an interconnected chain between the individual to how we look at leadership. That is true in any environment. Leadership is not within the family. There is a sense of leadership within our group of friends, within businesses, governments, in any space of human beings. There is some kind of power dynamic and some kind of way we show up to it. So to all of that we can call leadership. So the integration of the understanding, but it must start with the individual. So out of one individual understanding that, starting to form human environments that are in alignment with the ever-present nature of ourselves, with the oneness of our nature, with the natural experience or expression of freedom and joy. So more and more people coming and showing up to this world, to their businesses, to their families, to any social environment that they're in, from that place, and creating human environments that are based in our true nature. Then to start create business environments from that place. I think where I love the work in business, that and one of my choices to do that. First, I just love, and within all of that, I'm also very strategic, and I love to think of creative ways to solve things and entrepreneurial solutions. But I think this is where we have the most power. It's our own platform. You're here on the podcast, and you can say whatever you want, and you can host whoever you want. and it's maybe one of the only places left for full expression and to call for change. So I think calling the leaders or people at the top of our social systems to do this change is putting us maybe in a victim place, or a place of waiting for the person who have all the power and all the benefits of it to make a change. And also, I don't think it's fair for us to say, people who suffer from these systems, people who are abused by our perceptions and discrimination, they need to change it. I think the majority of us in between need to call for a different way, because all of us suffer from it. There isn't one kind of community, race, country that suffer from it. Some maybe more than others, but there isn't only one that suffers and one that benefits. So many of us are in stress, are in unmanaged anger, frustration, separation, burnout, lack of fulfillment. Those words are just so common in people's language. So all of us really feel the detriments of it. So the business space is where I call us to let us take the power over making this change in how we treat the people that we work with, and how we conduct our businesses, and what our businesses are oriented towards. For me, I like to see business as a service to humanity. If we start from that place and asking ourselves how we can best serve humanity through what I do, I think we are doing a great deal. You still need to make money, and that's okay. It's not instead, and you need to be profitable, and you need to be able to sustain your business and the people you employ. It's not other than that. But starting with this place of how we can create something that is in service to humanity as a whole, I think we change the experience we call even business or workplaces. And from that place, for me, this chain ends or begins or complete itself in social unity or global unity or wholesomeness of humanity as it is. Because what the dualistic point of view or the me perception always, how all of us want freedom and joy and happiness and those things, but how the me is trying to create them is by separation. So for itself, it closes itself down. It builds walls around its heart. It thinks it will be protected. It disconnects from other people, think it will be protected and find freedom. And on the global level, then we're doing it with borders. So we separate from the other country or from our neighbors. Then we do that. We start to call them enemies. Then when we call them enemies, it's okay that we go and bomb one another. So none of this will happen from one individual looking at another and recognizing we share the same nature to our being. And when the sense of separation dissolves, for me, the beginning of it, of understanding our true nature, is the first and most important solution to dissolve all systems of separation, war, abuse, hierarchy, power, incarceration, all of these systems that really suppress this other person, this thing that we call another person. And touching it through leadership and then business owners that are also purposeful in what they do, is how I see this link really connects and come back to completion. And all of us walk in this exact same world, instead of being afraid from one another, and instead of searching for something outside of ourselves, walking in this exact same world and recognizing, look at this beautiful unconditional freedom that is always present in my experience.
Living in this exact same world, in the expression of our true self. It's that's a big deal in a way. but not a powerfully big deal. It's quite simple, as you say, and subtle and easy to understand. But the mind always wants to complicate things and make it into something else. But I think you're onto something. Obviously, it's work for people. And of course, business and spirituality and money and spirituality and God don't mix, you know. It's like that's part of it too, that it doesn't mix. I mean, I'm in business myself, and I've been doing a spiritual thing for 20 years and I'm still in business. You know, I haven't gone broke from sitting in a rock. You know, I meditated and all that stuff, but business has still gone on quite efficiently in some regards, you know.
Right.
And it's wonderful.
And I think this is something in the sorry to jump off in there, but in the spiritual communities, I think there is often some kind of hesitation about dealing with money or charging for what you offer and stuff like that. And look, if you have enough and you're resourceful enough that you can offer what you do for free, that's amazing. But go and do that from a place of heart and owning your power, not from a place of discomfort and fear. And what I see often working with the people that are in the more spiritual side of the spectrum and want the more business support is there's what the view on money is not because I want to give myself freely, is that's part of it, but a lot of it is because of fear of self-worth or asking for the thing and some kind of negative relationship with money or with an exchange that is part of it. And for me, what's really sad to see is people who are very purposeful, who want to do very important work in the world, want to be on service, end up not doing it and working in something that doesn't fulfill them, but make them money because they couldn't see a way that they can ask for money for something that really is true to themselves. Mm-hmm. So in a way, you didn't want to ask for, or you didn't want to ask for it, or you didn't find a way to make it profitable enough for you, so it can create your livelihood. And instead, you are still earning money, you are still doing an exchange, but something that you are not actually care for and doesn't serve people in the world in the same level. So for me, it's actually very sad, and why it's really important for me to support within this community and of having people who do really care, who have very important work to do, would really support people to make sure that they can create their livelihood at least from doing that. And that's very simple. Look, it doesn't happen in 3 days, but you know, you stay in the game for long enough and it happens. And hopefully you also have a good support with it, because it is a challenging journey. Owning a business is not the easiest choice we can do for ourselves, but it's not something I will replace, but you know, it's not the easiest choice. It comes with responsibility and things to take care of. You know yourself. So like in anything, like we have a teacher for our spiritual journey or meditation. You know, it's good to have people to support that as well.
Yeah, and something that's really coming into my mind as well is the traditional way of going in and teaching motivation in businesses. A lot of it's a tax write-off just for the sake of it. They get anybody in, you know. That's a shame, really, that it gets to that. But I often see a lot of it, you know, which is fine in a way. But I'm just saying, if they could spend it more efficiently. But a lot of these, I've been to some heavy hitting conferences, and there's a lot of, you know, let's get motivated, let's get more. And you got somebody that it's like somebody trying to cure a sick mind with a sick mind. You know, you can't. And then more motivated. And they're like what you're saying, somebody's in the wrong job, doing the wrong job they don't want to do just for money, because if they do something else, you know, what do you think of that? There's a lot of money being spent and a lot of courses out there trying to motivate people that have no chance of getting motivated.
Yeah. Who are we trying to motivate? What kind of self we are trying to motivate? There is usually that it doesn't motivate the why it also doesn't last. It's like a lot of diets. It's great. You get the inspiration for few weeks. It doesn't last. It doesn't last. Motivation is, no one has a problem with motivation.
Mm-hmm.
No one has a problem with motivation. It's not, especially not an inherent problem. There's a problem of engaging with activities, people, kind of life, kind of work that isn't true to yourself. Motivation, look, we think we are greater than anything around us, and then we call ourselves Homo sapiens, a wise man, and we think we are the most modern species, and we give ourselves many compliments. But within that, we think that we are, again, separated from this universe or this power that I don't call it external or divine or anything necessarily, but a power that moves everything else, that orchestrates this show called Planet Earth, galaxies, rivers, mountains, icebergs, valleys. There is some kind of energy that moves from a speck of dust to the Himalayan range. The same thing. Why do we think that it's not the same thing that moves us?
Yeah.
And if it is, what kind of extra motivation do we need if we have the most powerful source or energy ever that was ever found also moving us as part of this show? So the need to go and find motivation, and again, it's kind of like the free will. It's not that it's not important at times, and I can have someone that motivates me for a moment, but you can't be on this adrenaline rush all the time and then dopamine hits, because again, it leads to exhaustion. It's squeezing the towel again and again and again and again and again until it dries out. When we remove this psychological self, this me perspective that is so energy draining, motivation is just so abundant. And that's another fear for people. They say, so wait, there is no ego, no me. I will just do nothing. I will just sit on the couch and eat ice cream and chips all day. No, it doesn't. The universe isn't just doing nothing. It's so creative. What is being replaced is not nothingness or laziness. It's just so much more rich. The experience that we call our life is so much more creative. It's so much more powerful, energetic, because there is nothing that gets in the way of this force naturally expressing itself.
We've nearly reached the end of the podcast. Do you do courses and have you a book and things, or where can people get in contact with you as well?
You have my website, that's karnigilad.com. That's my last name, then my first name.com. A variety of work. I run a group program. I do a lot of one-on-one work with leaders and business owners. There's a retreat that's being planned right now later this year that is not up yet. My website is the best way to stay updated on what's being offered. Yeah.
It's karnigilad.com, folks.
Yes.
It's been really insightful, and I'm going to watch your journey and see what happens next, and go from motivation to inspiration, and to thy own self be true, folks, and express yourself. That expression of the self. It's all really sounds really, really good. And I liked the insights that we got as well. Gilad, it's been really a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you well on your journey with what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for hosting me, and thank you for creating such a great platform that really serves a lot of people with very important messages. So I appreciate you for doing your side of the creative expression of love in your business.
Thanks, Gilad. And remember, folks, subscribe. Hit the subscribe button and join our tribe. You know. And Gilad, thank you. And I'll have to say goodbye and well done. And we'll talk again probably another time. Thank you.
Thank you.